This is my Creative Inquiry Project PowerPoint for FOED 3211. My mentor teacher actually selected my student for me. The reason she selected this student is because he had one of the lowest test scores in her class for the MAP test. She said that he was disconnected from learning and had no interest in learning. I asked for the MAP test scores and I never received them. I do realize that teachers are busy but she did give me some things to work on him with, which was letter sound recognition, and she said if we got the letter sound recognition part that we should start beginning sounds. I took a running record of what he knew, the letters and the sounds. He knew most of the letters of the alphabet. They were in ABC boot camp at this time. The letters that he weren't sure about were G, J, and X, and he couldn't tell me any of the sounds of the alphabet besides A, B, C, and D. So for the first activity, I introduced the letters of his name because I realized that when he wrote his name on his paper, it was just the first letter of his name and then scribbles. So for my first activity, that's what we focused on, was writing his name. So I had his name written on a piece of paper, and I would have him trace his name, and then I would have him build his name with manipulatives that I had brought in from Dr. Spears. And then after this, I would have him write his name on a whiteboard with an expo marker. He really liked this because we weren't just doing the same thing over and over again. He was getting to trace it, build it, write it. This also helped him to remember. He was doing three different things to help him remember how to write his name and the letters of his name. And we also talked about the sounds of those letters. For our second activity, what we did was we still focused on writing his name. Instead of using the whiteboard and the manipulatives, I had his name written out really big on a piece of paper, and he would have Play-Doh, and he would shape the Play-Doh to the letters of his name. And every time he would get a letter shaped out in the Play-Doh, I would have him trace the letter while telling me what the letter was and what the sound it made. For my third activity, he had his name. He could write his name really good. He knew the letters and the sounds. So I moved on to all the letter recognition, sound like recognition that he needed to work on. So to help with letter sound recognition, I used a mystery box with alphabet manipulatives inside. How this works was, it was a cardboard box with a hole in the top. He'd reach his hand in and grab out a mystery letter. So that letter would range from A to Z. I had all the letters in there, and he would have to draw one out and tell me the letter and what sound it made. The letters that he knew, I would just put them away in my Ziploc bag, and the letters that he did not know, we kept out on the table. After he drew out all the letters of the alphabet, we would take the letters that were still remaining on the table that he did not know. I would pick 3 of those letters. We would go over them, and how I would do that was, first, I would tell him the letter and the sound that the letter made for all 3 of the letters. And then I would ask him, in a different order than what I told him, I would ask him the letter and what sound it made. Sometimes he would get it, sometimes he wouldn't. He really had trouble with G and J. He would say J made G and G made J. And I really tried to work on that. And also M and W. It really confused him, probably because he would pull out a letter and he would say it was M, and then he would pull out the W and say it was M because he didn't know, and I honestly didn't know which one it was. It could be either one. So he would get confused on those. I would say, well, you already picked out M, so if that's not M, turn it upside down, and what letter is it? And he would still say M. So we really worked on M, W, G, and J on that day. Then for activity number 4, I used some puzzle manipulatives, and what it was there were 2 puzzle pieces, and one was the uppercase letter and one was the lowercase letter. And he really liked this, and he would put the puzzle pieces together, and when he got the puzzle pieces put together, I would ask him, I would say, can you tell me the letter, this letter? And he said, A. And then I would say, what sound does A make? And he would say, A. And I would say, correct. But then if he got it wrong, then we would put it aside and talk about it later. And then for our last activity, he was really getting good with letters and the sounds. And even with the SRA spelling, that's what they do at the school that I was placed in. They do SRA spelling, and they just spell sounds that they hear. They put the letters. So the teacher might say a real word, and then she might say a nonsense word. Like she could say, and they have to spell F-A-F. That's not a real word, but it helps them know that I need to write, when I hear the sound, I need to write F, and I need to write A. And he was actually, at the beginning, when I started working with him, he wasn't getting it at all. And then by the time that I ended my sessions with him, he was doing exactly, he was writing the exact letters that went along with the sound that the teacher said. And I was really impressed. So when I started singing this, I thought that we could start by doing beginning sounds with CVC words. So I would have in a baggie already pre-organized. I would have in a baggie like words like cat, fat, sat, hat, bat, rat. And I would have the AT already laid out for him on the desk. And I would ask him, can you make this word fat? And he would put the F in front of the AT. And I would say, okay, can you take the F away and make this word cat? And he would put the C in front of the AT. And then that would keep going until we got through with all the